Kevin Durso, 97.3 ESPN.com, was there on Saturday. He's been there throughout the year. And he joins us now with a look at the Flyers and the Penguins as they will face off on Wednesday night in Pittsburgh. Kevin, what's happening, man?
Not much, guys. How you doing?
All is good, and Flyers back in the playoffs after a year off. But obviously, as we watched the NHL schedule on Saturday night, nobody seemed interested in this particular matchup, and the Flyers end up with it. But they've given up, 5 goals every single time they played Pittsburgh. So was this the least favorable playoff possibility for them?
It was certainly probably one of the two, I would say. I guess the only other one that you would consider least favorable beyond this might be the Atlantic Division winner, which ended up being Tampa Bay. But other than that, yeah, because from a matchup standpoint, there have been struggles all throughout the season in the 4 previous meetings against Pittsburgh, and you've seen it. A couple games the Flyers were marginally competitive, and it just comes down to little things, making mistakes. Pittsburgh's a team that doesn't make many mistakes, quite frankly, so you see a team that's really well put together. There's a reason why they've been able to win back-to-back Stanley Cups. So is it the least favorable matchup? Probably, but the Flyers had said all along that they were not considering the matchup. They just wanted to get in, and it didn't matter who they played, they would be ready to go. So now it's kind of time to to prove it here.
Kevin, when people say there's a bad matchup, they don't match up well with Pittsburgh, what are certain areas where they struggle against this Penguins team?
It's typically once you get past the first couple of lines, the Flyers have a decent top 2 line combination here where they are capable of scoring, but then it's the defensive end of it that really comes into play. The Flyers used to be able to, when everything was really clicking against Pittsburgh in years past, it would be Giroux centering the top line, Couturier with the second line center, and it was a way for them to be able to take away both Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, because you had 2 centermen, I should say, who were very reliable and able to take out their 2 top center players. So you focus on that, and now you have the Flyers who have to rely on a 19-year-old Nolan Patrick to be a second-line center and have that kind of responsibility. If it's not him, it's probably somebody like Valtteri Filppula, or you get a guy like Scott Laughton or Yuri Laterra who ends up playing in those situations. So it creates a mismatch beyond the top line now that Sean Couturier is your top-line center. And it kind of breaks down below that. So it's really on players like Filppula, Laughton, Laterra, and Nolan Patrick as well, just to step up in this situation and prove how responsible you can be defensively, because Pittsburgh's going to be coming at you from all angles and trying to expose the weaknesses.
Kevin, do you think that Dave Hackstall makes any changes defensively because it's Pittsburgh? For example, Robert Haig has been out of the lineup, but he's one of the guys that leads the team in hits. Do they need to be more physical because it's the Penguins?
Yeah, I don't think the Flyers can go through an entire playoff series without making some changes. They're going to go into Game 1 and probably use the same combinations as Saturday's game, just because that's what Dave Hackstall's known to do. He rolls with a winning lineup. But I don't think they're going to be able to go through the entire series without making a few changes in certain areas. Defensively, for sure, in one angle, just because someone's going to probably get exposed in some way, and the ability to bring somebody in who may be fresher. Haig certainly has had a lot of time to observe from the press box as a healthy scratch, or at least that's what the Flyers are saying. He did come back from the injury really quickly, so you don't know if there's anything lingering there, but he's had a lot of time off now, so he should be ready to go at a moment's notice, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him enter the series at some point. If not in Game 1, which it doesn't seem like it's going to be, then maybe Game 2 or 3, pending on how the Flyers come out of the first 2 games.
You touched on Nolan Patrick. He's actually one of the few Flyers that did have a plus number against the Penguins in the 4 games in the regular season. What are your observations of Nolan Patrick been from early in the season, say, to now when he seems to be playing his best hockey?
The biggest thing is that he's healthy. He's come back from the early season concussion, the off-season surgery that he had going right into the draft, essentially. And now that he's healthy, he's got kind of found a new gear in his skating. He's much quicker to the puck. He's more aggressive on the puck. He's getting to the dirty areas. He's really kind of following the lead of Wayne Simmons in some ways and being that kind of player. The Flyers threw him into the top power play unit on Tuesday against the Islanders, and when truth be told, they didn't have a power play on Thursday against Carolina, so we could see if they would stick with that. They did have a couple on Saturday against the Rangers, and there was Nolan Patrick playing on the top unit with guys like Giroux and Couturier and Gostisbehere and Jake Voracek. So you have Nolan Patrick really assuming a big role now, and I think that's something that the coaches have entrusted in him now that he's been able to show this other gear in his skating, because I think it all starts with the skating. He's had to come out and show that he's got the energy level and that he can hit that gear and still be able to be the two-way player that he kind of demonstrated he was in the preseason and early in the season. Now the offensive side's coming around game by game, it seems. So he's showing the all-around skill, and he's always present on the ice. Every time he takes a shift, he's usually making something happen, and that's a big thing for him.
You talked about Nolan Patrick getting time on the power play. How much will special teams dictate the outcome of this series? Because the Penguins were pretty good during the regular season when they had the power play and the Flyers were not.
It's going to be the key to the series, quite honestly, because for the Flyers, the key is discipline more than anything. You don't want to give the Penguins many power play opportunities at all. They can just bring out a wave of talent, Crosby, Malkin, Kessel, all on that top power play unit. And then even the second power play unit, you get guys like Jake Gensel and Connor Sheary in there. And Pittsburgh just has so much talent on their two power play units, especially the top one, that the more opportunities that they get, the more likely the Flyers won't survive. So if you can play a disciplined game, at 5-on-5, the Flyers have at times definitely shown they've been able to keep up with Pittsburgh. The areas where the game has typically been lost in these 4 meetings this regular season were either short spans, maybe about 3 to 5 minutes in each game, where everything fell apart for the Flyers, or power play opportunities that went against them, gave Pittsburgh the chance to strike, and they wouldn't miss. So it's the key to the series. The Flyers have to use their power play to take advantage of miscues from Pittsburgh, because if Pittsburgh finds any way to become unraveled by this or be undisciplined, you have to make them pay for it. So that's where the games and the series are going to come down to. It's just about being disciplined and taking advantage of your power play opportunities.
Kevin Durso is with us, Kevin_Durso. Read him at 973ESPN.com. Kevin, you just posted an article today about how this was a season of growth and that they got rewarded with the playoff berth. Do you think this was a surprise that they were able to make the playoffs with where they are?
I don't think it was overly a surprise, because I think the team had the expectation all along. I think from the outside looking in, there was a lot of people who had second thoughts about this team being a playoff team when the roster was finalized and you had so many young players on there. And not everybody who was a young player in camp was making the team, obviously, either. So you were putting a lot of weight on young players to try to make something happen. And sure enough, too, by the time November rolls around and you're struggling to win games and you have a 10-game losing streak, people are going to have their doubts. The reward of this is how much those individual players have grown throughout the year. To see second-half turnarounds from Travis Konechny, Nolan Patrick, Oscar Lindblom comes in the middle of the second half of the season and is an instant contributor to that as well. Even though he doesn't have as many points, he's still certainly making things happen. And then you factor in the back end as well. The Flyers' top pairing is a third-year player in Shane Gostisbehere and a second-year player in Ivan Provorov. Travis Sanheim's a rookie who's playing second-pairing minutes. So you get all of those guys factored into it. And then Haig as well. You can't forget Robert Haig had a big significant chunk of playing time early on before the injury, and now subsequent sort of benching as a healthy scratch. But all of those guys played key roles, and you tend to forget that a guy like Sean Couturier is still a youthful player in his own right. He's 25 years old. So all of these players have stepped up in such a big way that that's really the reason that the Flyers can get over the hump. It's a big thing for Claude Giroux to be doing what he's doing and Jake Voracek to be doing what he's doing. But for those guys, all these young players to be having incredible years and putting it all together and finding a way to improve their game all around, that's really where this season got rewarded.
I guess we got to leave with Claude Giroux. He's been named the third star of the week. He's over 100 points, first time in his career, first time since Eric Lindros at a Flyers done it, got his first hat trick the other day. He finishes the season with 102 points, which includes 68 assists and the 34 goals after the hat trick the other day. But when we talk about the best players in the league, the way he's playing right now, is he good enough to pull off an upset?
He should be in the running for the Hart Trophy for sure. And it's tough to see sometimes because the league does gravitate towards Connor McDavid's Connor McDavid led the league in points, but his team didn't make the playoffs. They'll still kind of overshadow the guys who did, and I compare Giroux's situation to Taylor Hall in a sense because both of them had key roles in their teams making the playoffs. Giroux with the Flyers and Hall with New Jersey. But you look at other players around the league, Malkin will get a lot of attention. I'm sure Crosby even gets attention, even though he was actually third highest on his team in points this season. And even, you go Nikita Kucherov is leading Tampa in points and got to 100 as well. And all of these players seem to get more attention than Giroux does on a constant basis. It's always something that I felt Claude Giroux doesn't mind at all. He doesn't seem to shy away from being the under-the-radar kind of player still, even though he's more than established himself this season in such a resurgence that should put him in the running for it. He got basically was the leader of the Flyers getting back to the playoffs. He has to act as leader, obviously, as the captain. And his role overall, take out the 34 goals, the hat trick on the final day, the 102 points, he had to really get the locker room to remain positive in a time when things were going completely wrong. They were losing 10 straight games. They couldn't put together anything successful. And here they are. They're going to start a playoff series on Wednesday. So to take all of that into consideration, Giroux is a more than worthy candidate here, and he should be getting consideration, no question.
All right, we'll check out all the awards and everything, but the Flyers playoff run begins on Wednesday, 7 o'clock, against the Penguins, and we'll give you details on where you can find that game. It'll certainly be on our sister station, 104.1 FM, 1450 AM, and we'll have more from Kevin this week, and, of course, you can always read Kevin Durso at 973ESPN.com. All right, Kevin, take care, man.
You got it, guys. Thanks for having me on.